Right. Hello. Hi, and welcome everybody for coming here today. And thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to introduce Pedro Earp, who spent over 22 years in leadership roles at AmBev and AB-InBev. You can correct me later. I'm still learning. Also including CEO of uh, ZX Ventures.
Yes.
Yes. Recently, Pedro has focused on the science of happiness, studied it since 2022. Uh, 2022, yes. Time flies so quick. He's is one of the first graduates in MA in happiness studies in this recent May 2024. Pedro also a founding of LyfeOS to help people reach their full potential. And he has a lot to share with us today, like why he achieved all of the things that he can achieve and he still want to learn happiness study. And please join me in welcoming Pedro up. Hello.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So how are you doing today?
Very good. Very good. Just came back from a long holidays of almost 20 days. So fully rested and ready for the end of the year.
Mm. Well, so this going to be a basic question that everybody will have this question. So how did you find MA in happiness program?
Yeah. So the kind of my my first contact with happiness studies and the science of happiness actually happened in 2016, when I had my twins. My wife got pregnant in 2016, and she had a very difficult pregnancy. She had all kinds of challenges, and it was already a risky pregnancy, because the babies were twins, and that's always a risky pregnancy. And she had other complications and things like that. And I'm Catholic, and usually when you have kids, you want them to be healthy, right? That's the kind of number one thing that I usually ask, and ask God for the kids to be healthy. But it was looking very challenging. And when the babies were born, actually almost by a miracle, their health was great. They were born with 32 weeks. They were born very small. My boy George was born with like 1 kilo, and Isabella with like 2 kilos. So Isabella was actually within the smallest 1% babies in the world. And George was within the 1%. Isabella was within the 5%. And everything was looking great. But actually, when we were leaving the NICU, actually George was diagnosed deaf. He couldn't hear. And then we went to and then I kind of said, look, people have difficulties in life, and everything is going to be fine. But I said, look, if George is going to have some sort of challenge and not perfectly healthy, then the second thing that I can wish for him is for him to be happy. And I'm a kind of a bit of a nerd and a geek, and I start studying people with some hearing challenges and happiness. And to my surprise, I found that some studies show that actually people that are born deaf, and have hearing disabilities, they're on average happier than regular people, for a variety of reasons. One, they are born like this, so they don't have any comparison, right? They don't lose anything because they're always like this. They also develop other abilities, right, that other people don't have. So there are a lot of reasons for that. Well, I mean, again, a second miracle happened 4 weeks later. George started hearing, and he never had a problem since then. It was kind of a very fortunate situation. But that's kind of was my first contact with happiness studies. And then I start reading about happiness studies, if you want. I said, look, if I want my kids to be happy and there's a science about happiness, why not study it? So that was from 2016 to 2022. And I was still working at ABI. 2022, when I left ABI, I was thinking about, okay, what's kind of next, in my life. And by coincidence, I saw an article. There was an article in a news in a newspaper here in the US saying that the first Masters in Happiness Studies was going to be launched. Steve Jobs used to say that the things, they always make sense ex post, right? When you look back, the things happen for a reason. And that was kind of a fortunate coincidence. And I said, that's a calling. I've been studying happiness as a hobby for a while. Now there's a master's in happiness, and then I decided to join the master's in happiness studies and make this kind of the next phase of my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad to learn that from you. Especially like knowing that you really have this love for like unconditional love for your kid. Um, I was born very small and kept like I have difficulty myself too, and so I understand like how frustrated parent could be if they don't have this education, if they don't have this mindset of happiness. That's the reason why a lot of parent, especially a lot of mom, has this kept like I forgot the term. Good, I'm not used to the term. They kept like have this mentality, like breakdown mentality during the time that they like after they have childbirth. But
Yeah.
it's because like everybody keep talking something negative about the baby, and I'm so glad that um you want to avoid all of that, that you create this barrier, this shield for yourself and your family and your loved one, that you start searching for happiness studying. um so I know that recently you found your company, which is LyfeOS. Did you found your company during the time that you learn happiness study as well, because of about this positive psychology, then happiness study, and you found your company, or you have had the idea of creating your business way before that?
No, it was actually during the time that I was in the Masters of Happiness. Two things came together, right? So during my time at ABI, I learned a lot about management. And management works, right? I joined the company in 2000. The company was worth like $10 billion. And the company today is worth like $200 billion, right? So it grew like 20 times. And this is basically management, right? And management, in a way, it's kind of simple. You have a dream and your company has a purpose, you have a plan, and then you execute that plan, day in and day out with excellence, right? That's basically what management is. And it works, right? The companies in the US that are listed in the stock market, they grow average 10% every year based on management. And one thing that I was always thinking about is why people don't apply some of these principles to their own lives, right? I mean, sometimes we even see people that are very good in managing companies, in managing businesses, but then you take a look at their lives and their life is a mess, right? So I always had these questions because I applied to my personal life a lot of management principles, right? I always had an idea where I wanted to get. I always had kind of a plan, and I always tried to execute day in and day out the routines that will take me there. So that was kind of one question, and the second one is like, okay, on the what to do day in and day out, there's a science, which is the science of happiness, right? So the idea of the business was to kind of bring the two things together. How can we manage our lives to be happier, and at the same time, to do this in a way that is kind of more democratic and that we could touch a lot of people, right? Because the MA happiness studies, for example, it's an amazing opportunity, right? It's like you really learn how to manage your life, how to be happier and things like that. but it's for a very small group of people, right? Not anybody can afford or have the time or have the privilege to be able to attend something like that. So our idea is, how can we take management and science of happiness and have it in an app or a platform that can reach kind of billions of people, right? That was kind of the idea.
Oh, so I did not know you create this app. So this app is for happiness. Can you share more about your app, please? Thank you.
Yeah. So we launched the app on September last year. We are still piloting it and still only in Brazil. But the idea is kind of somewhat simple. You know, we took kind of the the Spire model, right? And we say, look, what's the area of your life that you would like to improve? And then you pick one area of your life that you wanted to improve. And then we suggest protocols, right? And habits and routines that you can take to improve that area of your life, right? So if you want to improve mental health or emotional well-being, you can do, gratitude journal, gratitude messaging, meditation. There are a lot of things that you can do. And the app today is kind of habit tracking app, but there is a lot of gamification in it, so every time you execute a habit, you gain some coins. If you don't execute a habit, you lose coins. You can play some card games, when you execute a habit, that you can multiply your coins. So in a way, it's kind of it's a habit, it's a app that helps people create positive habits with gamification.
And how do you think Brazilian accept this app? But I know we have multiple students from Brazil. Also, we have a professor from Brazil as well. I feel like Brazil has picked up on this positive psychology and happiness study since, like 5, 6, 10 years ago. And it's became something not just small, but it became a major in Brazil. So how does people in Brazil pick up this app?
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's we've been kind of positively surprised. The app now has 50,000 people on a monthly basis, and we've been growing 20% per week. So it's been very good, the growth. But Brazil has one challenge, which is Brazil is a very unequal country. The inequality is very high. So a lot of the population, they kind of think that happiness is kind of a privilege, and happiness is something that they will think about once they make money. The vast majority of the population, they're living day by day, and they're struggling to survive, basically. So it's kind of tricky, because there's this perception, that okay, oh, an app for happiness, okay, I'm still trying to pay my bills, and the day I'm able to pay my bills, then I'm gonna worry about this thing, which actually it's a false um assumption, right? Because I think, again, we learned that happier people, and people that try to find work that they are good at and they love, usually they do much better than people that don't, and then they make money. So there's a lot of research from that. The Harvard professor, right, Sean Anker, for a long time, people believe that success brings happiness, and actually the order is the reverse, right? Happiness brings success. So we also trying to educate people in the sense of, okay, happiness is not a privilege. Happiness is actually a necessary condition for you to do well in life, emotionally, professionally, relationship wise, and whatever.
Very nice. And so Shilin from Taiwan has this question for you. Is the app going to open to the public or for enterprise?
So it's a very good question. We are kind of testing both models. Um, in a way, uh, the app needs to work for human beings, and for individuals, right? Because at the end, if you're just selling the app to companies so they can tell their employees that they care about their well-being, but the app doesn't work for the individual, then you're just collecting a check from a company, but you're not actually impacting positively the world, right? And our company is very purpose-driven in that sense. So all of our metrics, and everything that we're trying to accomplish is actually for you end users and individual users. But we found out that there are a lot of companies that are more and more worried and wanting to invest in the well-being of their employees, right? So we've been testing with some companies. We are starting with the leadership, so we've been doing some lectures, and we're preparing our retreat for leadership of companies. So we're starting from the top, but that's another avenue that we're exploring.
That's awesome. Well, if you need any more support, let me know. I'm sure we have a lot of MA students who like to support your company. Personally, I know one of my best friend who's also in the MA program. She's currently creating not just an app, but she's also teach AI, and we have been learning, and especially like the group had been teaching and still learning AI and develop it. And she's going to launch one of the apps soon, but it's for student, it's for general public. And it's a little bit different than what you offer, but it's also for the good, for mindfulness, affirmation, and things like that. And so we are here to do the good thing for people. Um, just go back to your app a little bit. So do you use the information from happiness study, or which type of information do you use in your app to provide it to the user?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that we learned that I use on the business, right? So the first one is kind of the framework and the general theory, right? The WholeBeing model, the SPIRE model, all of that. But I also use a lot of the things that we learn in terms of like protocols. There is one challenge. Sometimes you go to university, or you go to a lecture, or you go to a workshop, and then you learn a lot. But then you go back on your day-to-day and things get lost, right? And you don't have the discipline to follow it up. So a lot of the effort that we've been putting is how can we make sure that we have an app that people use it to transform their day-to-day, instead of just being educated and learn one time and then forget about it, So one of our advisors, in our advisory board was Megan. Megan is the president of the WholeBeing Institute. And she was also an advisor for Kripalu, the yoga center, right, in the US. And she was telling me that. She was telling, look, people come to these retreats, and they come to these amazing experiences. But a lot of people, they go back to their day-to-day, and then 6 months later, they are not applying the things that they have learned, So a lot of our effort on the app is, okay, 3 months after people started, are they still there? Have they transformed their routines? And are they happier or not than they were before? That's the effort.
Yes, that's exactly why we still have to do touch up, touch up base, like touch up conversation with not just the student, but also like with everybody who have learned happiness studies or positive psychology. It's because most of the time when I text other students, I figured out that everybody have this things going on in their life. Either it's a spiral up or a spiral down. After we graduate, and the same thing with life, business and life is the same. So if we don't touch up with people, then and remind them. We talk about the three art of change. Recently, I have the leverage to share that with our Vietnamese students as well. And I forgot about the repetition. Repetition is like a repeat. Instead, I say reputation, which is another things of the R. And the three R of change, we have ritual, we have repetition, and we have reminder. That is the three R of change, and we constantly have to um, be the reminder of someone else, or we have to remind our own self. And I feel like if anyone who run business or who have family, they should do the reminder constantly, not just once a month, but almost like every week, if they can, to remind people. Otherwise, people would forget. So you are talking about reminding people. Do you have a team of people who contact your client, your user, to remind them or to ask a question, or what would you do for the app?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So kind of 90% of all activities that you do on a daily basis, they are habits or routines. So we repeat a lot, right? The things that we do. We wake up every day, we take breakfast, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, we drink coffee, we take our car, we go to work. So these are things that we repeat every day, right? And you are what you do repeatedly, right? There is no way to become someone if you're not acting into that person, right? So you can say, oh, I'm a writer, you can imagine that you're a writer, whatever. You're a writer if you write every day and you write books, right? You say, oh, I'm a runner. You're a runner if you run every day and you run races, right? Or whatever. So there's no other way of transforming yourself, and becoming who you can become, if not by the creation of habits and routines, right? And habits and routines, they have this, right? You need a reminder to execute the habit. You need to, it needs to be an efficient thing to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And you need to link a reward, with the execution of the habit, right? So your brain starts understanding that, you've been successful on that thing and you liked it, and you're going to be repeating a lot. One of the main challenges that we have is actually reminders. Uh, People forget, people put in there, oh, I'm going to take a supplement, I'm going to take a vitamin, I'm going to do meditation, but it's a new habit. So it's still not installed in your routine. And then you forget to do it, right? So our app, for example, we have a lot of different ways that you can be reminded, right? One of them is we integrate with your calendar. So if you use a calendar on a day-to-day, your habits are inserted into your calendar automatically. Second, you receive notifications, right? So you receive notifications on the app to remember to do the habits. Now, but the problem is that people now, they have so many notifications that they block the notification. So a third thing that we do is that for new habits, we remind you by WhatsApp, so that you can remember. So I would say even more, I sometimes reminding people of what they learn on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis, not enough. You have to remind them on a daily basis, and they need to execute what they learn on a daily basis. Otherwise, it doesn't become a habit. And if it doesn't become a habit, you don't transform your life.
Yes, I agree with you. To form a habit, you do need a lot of reminder, and you have to find a lot of way to remind you to form a good habit. And so back to the MA program. So when you learn, so just a hint for everybody, I knew Pedro since I feel like the first day like we was in the same tag team or
Yeah, we were.
okay. Um, awesome. So that's why I feel like Pedro and I have knew each other, have known each other for a long time, just because he knew me when I was single. No, I was with Ben. I was not single, but I was not married. Then I married and have kids. So I feel like I knew him for a long time because he knew me since I was younger and then young and older. Anyway, I always knew that Petro have something going on in his life, like really busy, and he always run business. But now he taking, classes and courses in happiness study. Um, like my question for you is, how would you manage your life before, where you run a company and you have a family and you join the MA in happiness studies and then form a business? How would you manage your life doing all of that since you are so busy? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, it's funny because I was talking to my team yesterday about that, right? So like if you take a look at the dimensions of the spire, right? If you think about let's simplify it, right? Let's call it like relationships, work, and vitality, right? Which is mental health, physical health, spirituality, everything combined. Um, you can choose to be 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 in one or two of these dimensions, right? But it's very hard for you to be amazing at everything at the same time, right? It's very hard to be the best dad and the best mom in the world, to be amazing at work, being a marathoner, meditation expert. It's very hard for you to be a 10 in everything. The majority of people, they usually let external factors command their priorities, right? Uh, Expectations that their parents have about work, that you need to work hard, or, your family, requires a lot of your time and things like that. And I think the trick there is to be very intentional and aware of the choices that you make on how you prioritize your time and effort, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was working at ABI, before I got married, I wanted to be a 9 or a 10 at work. Fortunately, I didn't have a family. Like I didn't know my wife. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. But I made a sacrifice, which is I lived away from my parents, right? My parents are from Rio, and I left for the past, since 18 years old, I'm living apart from my parents, But that's something that I was intentional about. I said, work at this stage of my life is very important. My parents were very supportive of that, and I made that sacrifice. I exercised and I took care of my, vitality, but I wasn't a marathon runner, like I am today, right? So I think you have to be intentional about things, and you have to know that if you want to be a 9 or a 10 on something, you will be a 6 or a 7 in another dimension. And you got to know that this is a conscious choice, and you got to be fine with the choice, and people around you need to be fine with that choice as well, right? So what happens a lot of times is that some people say, oh, I'm going to be a 9 or 10 at work and I'm going to dedicate my time. They don't realize that they're going to be a 6 or a 5 at home. And then they get divorced, their kids don't like them, or, kind of miss them and whatever that is. And then life becomes very complicated, to give you a practical example, right? Now that I kind of working at ABI, I left ABI and I was thinking about the priorities of my life, At first, I said, you know what? I'm going to be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 father and husband. And I'm probably going to be a professor or something like that, which is fulfilling for me, but it's not kind of a big dream, So I'll be more like a 7 or 8 at work, and then I'll take care of my health, right? I'll exercise, I'll do the things that I want to do. And once I started, studying happiness studies and seeing the impact that, potentially my company could make in the world of, democratizing the science of happiness and all that. Then I changed my mind a little bit, I say, look, next 10 years, I have once in a lifetime chance of really making a difference. And I came to my wife and I said, look, I'm going to be probably a 8 out of 10 father, right? I will be in all the important things that the kids need. I'll be a supportive father. I'll try to take them to school every day. I'll try to have dinner with them every day, but I'll have to travel, so I'll be away for some time and, and blah, blah. And that's fine, and my wife was fine with that. And, my kids are too young to have this conversation, but I think they're fine with that too, but that's a conscious choice, and then things work out. So today I'm very balanced, I hope that I'm at least in time dedication, I'm an 8 out of 10, father or husband. I really dedicate a lot of time at my work, and I can still, be also a 7 or 8 in my health and my vitality.
Yeah, I think you did really great job. We learn about different hats. We wear different hats. At work, we wear this hat, and then at home, we wear the other hats, Sometimes people use the sunglass as a reminder of it's like switching the sunglass or switching the hat, and we will be that person who wear the hat or wear that sunglass. And that's why I love to talk to all of the MA in Happiness graduates, because each of the graduates remind me of something else about, all the information of the lecture that we had learned, because we learn a lot. So I want to go back to Shilin in Taiwan a little bit. She always have great question, and I love her question a lot. But she asked you about she have a few questions for you, like if they ask whether or not would learn a Mandarin version. That's the first question, and the other question is, I'm curious about, are there any different for various user attached to the app so far, for people from general public and one from enterprise? Are there different trends? That is the second question for you.
So yeah, the objective of the app is to be global, right? And we hopefully, if it works out, we're gonna launch in all the countries, in all the potential languages, and this objective. But right now, we are in the stage of proving that it works, right? And we set up certain milestones. So the first milestone was, are people interested in it? Can we kind of bring enough people that it makes it interesting? And this KPI, milestone is going very well. We have like 50,000 people growing 20% week after week. It's growing. There's a lot of demand, right? People really, that's something that really helps solve a problem. The second one is, in today's world, it's very hard for you to bring users to an app, right? Because you have to advertise, it's getting very competitive, it's very expensive, whatever. So the second thing that we wanted to do is, okay, can I bring people at a reasonable cost, to the app? And this one we're also doing very well. The third one will be, do people enjoy the experience, and is the app effective or not? And this one is doing very well as well. We have a metric, called Net Promoter Score, NPS. Our NPS is very, very high. Now we are kind of on the fourth milestone. And the fourth milestone is, does it work, right? So are people happier 6 months later and 1 year later, than they joined the app? And this one we're still answering, right? Because we launched it in September, so it's still like early days. The evidence that we have so far is that yes, people are happier, the ones that stay in the app, but there's a lot of people that fall off, the app during 6 months, right? I don't know if you know this, but kind of health and wellness apps, usually they have a 30-day retention of 80%. So only 80% of people that join a health and wellness app, they are still there after 1 month, right? So 92 of people give up. So we're implementing a lot of things, gamification, rewards and things for people to stay. So that's kind of the next challenge on the journey. And then the last one is monetization, right? Do we have a viable business model or not? So as soon as we pass this fourth milestone, then we're gonna start expanding into other countries. That's kind of the idea. And then, Jasmine, the second question was, sorry, I forgot.
Yes, the second question, are there any different for various users attached to the app so far? For people from general public and the ones from enterprise, are there different trend? Yeah, I assume Shalene asked a question like if people from public want something different than the people, and from enterprise.
Yeah, it's very different. It's very different. Um, so usually, people from the general public, they have a motivation. If they downloaded the app, they go through the onboarding and they do something, they want to change something in their lives. And this is needed, right? Because implement new habits not easy, right? It's something that takes time, it takes effort, and if you don't have the right motivation, then it's kind of hard for you to, to execute. On the enterprise side, whenever we implement it as a company program, then it's more here and there, because some people have the motivation and they do it. Some people have less motivation, so the motivation factor in the general public is more, it's kind of it's more self-selecting, right, than on the enterprise. And the second one is that at the enterprise level, we are focusing a lot on your engagement and satisfaction at work. What we saw is that some of the employees of companies, they have a bit of a concern of companies, potentially implementing a program that track their health, their habits and things like that. So in the enterprise, we are focusing much more on work related issues than general well-being.
Yes, I can see that too, because I currently also coach one business that I know, and I have to ask advice from other coach who had been coaching business before me. A lot of questions that I know that we in happiness study and also in the type of coaching that I am learned before happiness studies, we want to focus more in the root, learning about our inner happiness, inner awareness, and well-being. But for business, don't want to focus about that because from the beginning, Pedro also mentioned about like business, they want to focus more on the outcome, on the
Yeah.
fruit, like on the financial part, like how can our business can make more money, and then how can the employee understand understand the company, understand the management, and can produce the best. And so that's very much what the enterprise will want to focus. And that's I feel like that's just not just in Brazil and not just in Vietnam, but it's also worldwide. That's why we will have a way to talk to enterprise, to business, from like talking about the outcome, but then deeper than the outcome, the spiral up, deeper than the outcome, then that's the root. And there's the well-being of the employee. If the employee is not happy, then nobody's happy. And I feel like it must be different to talk to enterprise for sure, But overall, like really, if people really understand this whole being concept, then they have to focus more from the inner self. But we don't talk
Yeah.
about the inner self for the business first. We have to talk about the outcome first, seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Is that true?
The good, yeah, that's true. But the good news that there is a lot of research that shows that happy employees are more productive and profitable, right? So I think when I talk to companies, I think that discussion it's easy to have because there's so much research, showing Google did a big research. I think it was the University of Warwick. They did a general study on the productivity of happier employees, right? And they compare different groups of employees within the same companies. The happiest groups, and departments within companies, they were on average 12% more productive than the unhappiest groups. And they did that research in Google, which is a knowledge economy, which is happiness is even more important, right? Because it's kind of creativity requires for you to, to be well. Uh, in Google, 37% higher productivity in the happiest employees compared to the unhappiest, So there's a lot of evidence showing that happiness really impacts profitability and productivity of employees. The challenge on the corporate side today is that they say, okay, I buy into it, I think it's important, but they have much deeper problems today, and problems that have more priority. They have this whole debate of hybrid versus remote versus in person. Then they have the whole thing about mental health of employees, and they have absenteeism, So there are people, the pushback a little bit is, oh, I believe happiness is key, whatever, but this is kind of the top of the cherry on the cake, but the corporate world has a lot of other challenges that are more urgent, so that's kind of the pushback that sometimes we hear.
And that's smart that you want to target for the business side first. But more people spend their time at work than at home or somewhere else. Especially, I don't know, maybe in Brazil it's the same with America. But I feel like people in America work a lot more than people who live in Asia. Like everyone that I know in Asia, they are very chill. So in Europe, they are very chill. Same in Taiwan, yes. So I feel like we are workaholic, and it's really good that you target um, to the business side first. And you mentioned about your app have 56,000 user right now since you launched from last September. Right now it's also September, so your app maybe it's about a year old now or already been a year
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's perfect timing. Um, so how did you find this market? 56,000 people user is not a small number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Brazil has 200 million, and the population of Brazil is 200 million, right? So it's a big, big country. Um, but yeah, there's demand, right? Who doesn't want to be happier? Who doesn't want to, fulfill its human potential? So the market is massive. Um, Today there are a lot of people trying to address the same, influencers, for example, right? There are a lot of influencers in Brazil now talking about um, happiness, well-being, coaching, life coaching, and uh, neuroscience, right? And all the kind of this areas, longevity. The reach of these people in Brazil are insane. People have 14 million followers, 30 million followers. You have platforms that are super expensive. They have 100,000 people, so the demand is there, right? The demand is there. And if you want to get a large audience, it's very easy. But the challenge is not that, the challenge is, do I have an effective tool? Do I have something that works? And unfortunately, a lot of these people, they sell the dream, and they sell the promise that you will be happy or whatever. But at the end, it's very, very hard, right? As we all know. So the commitment of we're spending very, very, very little money to acquire, and to attract users. And we committed to only accelerate acquisition of users once we have proven that our thing works, right? Because otherwise you're just selling a dream and not delivering it.
Yes, that's an an ugly truth about the new generation this day. And I feel like not just the new generation this day, but sometime in our life, we also sell our dreams for less as well. Um, until we feel disconnect to our with our inner self, and we feel like there's no hope. We feel drained and sad and upset all the time. That is when we start asking ourselves, question about happiness studies, or even we see other people doing something that unfair to other people, and we are unable to help. That is also the time that we raise this happiness study in our mind as well. And I want to go back a little bit. Insulin question on the chat box, and back to the conversation you had earlier, and she was asking about the performance, the boss view, on how does gender retention. I assume that she want to ask, like, when people learn information from your app, then does the boss has different point of view? Does any boss change their point of view, and how's the performance overall? Is that right?
So yeah, let me see if I understood the question. So what activities change the retention rate, right? How does that change the retention? I think the question was around kind of what activities change retention rates, right? And there are a lot of things, and that's a difficulty, right? There is not one thing that I say, oh, you're gonna do this, and people are gonna be retained for a long, long time, right? So let me mention some of them, right? So the first one is motivation, right? If you ask yourself, people that you have around you that really change for better, right? In a radical way, right? People are kind of in a difficult situation, and people really change, and now they have a happy and healthy life and things like that. 99% of these people went through a deep crisis, and people change when the pain of staying the same is higher than the pain of change, because change is hard, right? So the one thing that we see, for example, people that have high retention on the app are people that have gone through a crisis, right? And they have a deep motivation and a deep need for change, right? Which is unfortunate, right? And that's exactly what our app is trying to do. Our app is trying to make it so much more efficient that it doesn't require a crisis for you to change, right? The second thing is there needs to be a habit fit. Whatever you suggest in terms of protocols or habits for people to do to improve that aspect of their life, it's got to match their personality, it's got to match their, their personal preferences, because otherwise it doesn't work, right? I'll give you an example. I love running. I've been running marathons for 20 years now. But I hate strength training. I hate lifting weights, and it's kind of strange, right? Because it's a little similar, right? It's effort, it's going to the gym, it's physical exercise. It requires some mental fitness as well, so, but it is what it is, I dislike strength training and I like running. So if somebody tells me, oh, you know what, to be happy, you need to take care of your physical health, you got to go to the gym and do some strength training, is not going to work for me, right? So that's kind of a second one. And then there's a third one, which is more of an intrinsic trait, which is conscientiousness, right? Which is your ability to endure difficult times, your grit, right? Your discipline. So there are some people that are more disciplined than other people, so once they set themselves to do something, they have usually the discipline and the resilience to do it, so these three are important, the motivation, the fit, with whatever we recommend, and kind of the intrinsic discipline that people have are very important. Now, that's why uh, change is so hard, right? Because not a lot of people have a massive thing that they change in their lives. Not a lot of people try everything that they can to know what's a good fit, and not a lot of people kind of have the discipline that it takes to change, right? So that's exactly the challenge that we are doing, right? So we are putting a lot of other things on the app: gamification, rewards, uh, self-esteem, social support, to try to make that process easier.
Perfect. That's awesome. I guess Shilling got her. Oh, she got her hand raising right now. Hi, Shilling.
Hi. Sorry, my phone is on my car. I don't have my phone, so there's no video for me. Sorry for that. It's
No
just
problem.
Pedro, because you mentioned about there's also support for social interaction for that activity. So I'm just curious how this being done in social support.
Yeah, today is not. So that's kind of the next thing that we're putting on the roadmap. Today, it's more individual, right? And you go there and you see what area of your life you have to improve, and things like that. And today we don't have the social support thing, but we are launching this in until December. We are launching this social component. And the social component, it's gonna be two things. One thing is you're gonna be able to invite people to start a habit with you. And then you guys gonna get into groups, affinity groups, people that are executing the same habits, friends, and you're gonna be able to do that together. And you're also gonna have a content feed linked to that habit creation, where we going to put a lot of content about the habit, the benefits of creating the habit, the scientific evidence, testimonials and things like that. And then the members of the group are going to be able to interact between themselves, right? So uh, I'll give you one. I was talking to my team, and I said, look, I'll only be happy if three people use our app every day: my mom, my wife, and my sister. And why is that? Because my wife is like, she's always happy with everything. She's like, I always push her, saying, look, what do you want to improve in your life? What do you want to do better? What do you want to, and she's always like, oh, you know what? The only thing that I would really would like to do is to lose 2 kilos. I used to be thin. I would like to be thinner, and she's thin. And I was like, okay, can't be that. So my wife is like, she's content, she's in peace with herself. And it's very hard, to engage her in routine, habit, trying to become someone better, because she's happy, and so that's kind of one example. My mom is, because she is at a different stage in her life. She's kind of 77 years old. But my mom and my wife, they use Instagram, for example. and I say, look, if they use Instagram and Instagram is not necessarily good for you, why can't they use a social media or a social app that actually helps them create good habits? And I've been talking to my mom and my wife and my sister, and one thing that I think would make them join the app is if you have common habits. So for example, my mom also loves studying happiness. She reads philosophers, she reads like Viktor Frankl, Seneca, Stoicism, and whatever. And she's always giving me books, and then sometimes I read the book, sometimes I don't, and then she wants to talk about it. If I go to my mom and I say, Mom, let's do the following, let's read one book together. And then we're going to read the book, and then we're going to have this feed on the app, and then we're going to be able to talk, and we're going to have content there. I think my mom will join the app, and the same thing with my wife. My wife, I ask her, look, if there is something, that are going to start doing together, like we went to Switzerland doing tracking, and she loved it. And I'm like, okay, let's start training for tracking together. So I think the social component I think it's very important. We don't have it in the app yet, but it's coming.
Yes, that's excellent. Um, I re I just now look at your Instagram and I can see you on there. You are one of the star on there. And I just thought about your wife as well. Before you talk about her, I thought of her. I was like, how did Pedro's wife support him during the time? Because you was in a management position uh, before you joined MA in Happiness Studies. And then you take this MA in Happiness Studies for a lot of people. This would be another expense in a family. This program is not expensive at all, but still is very affordable. First of all, it's very affordable, but it's still an expense to a family. Especially you live in New York as well. Everything is so high price. You can, I feel like we can spend $1,000 easy for a dinner of, 5, 6, or 10 people. Anyway, when you are in a good position, when you were in a good position, and you take this MA in Happiness Studies program, and then you quit your job to launch the app, I assume. How did she support you?
Yeah, my wife has been an amazing partner. So we originally, from Brazil, and we met in Brazil. Um, she moved to the US, with me, and she always lived with her parents, right, and close to her parents. So she kind of gave up that. She also gave up her career. She was kind of a lawyer in Brazil, and if you move to the US, you cannot exercise law, right, unless you do a bar exam. Um, and now she's kind of the CEO of the family, and which is good because it also has always been a dream for her, to be a mom, and to have a family. But and again, she has this trait. She was born with it, that she's always happy, and she's always fine with where she is, So we actually we met. We were in Brazil. Then I got moved to the US, so we lived 7 months apart. Then she came to the US. Then we moved again to Brazil. And then we were in Brazil for 3 months, and then I got moved back to the US, and she's like, I'm happy, I mean, I can't complain, New York and São Paulo, two amazing cities. So I think she was blessed, because she was born with this thing that she seems to be always happy where she is, And a lot of us are, we're always in the pursuit, right? We always want some more. And the two schools of thought, I think they are valid. There are some people that their happiness is the here and now, their happiness is inside them. Their happiness is on being instead of conquering and progressing. And some people it's not, some people need self-development, and some people need to do something more, and be progressing all the time. I think both things work, provided that you don't attach your happiness to material things that are in the future. I think it's good for humans to have an objective, usually needs to be a good purpose, right? Something that impact other people in a positive way. Uh, and you need to be happy walking that journey every day, because if you only attach your happiness to getting there and every day is miserable, then you don't control the outcomes and you might live a miserable life, right? So, yeah, my wife has been an amazing partner.
Oh, that's amazing. I can see that too. I can see you are very happy now. Not comparing with like 2 years ago, because you was on, like, I feel like you always know what you want to do. The fact that you mentioned about control the outcome in your life, you already know what you should do in this life, and it's set a lot, control the outcome. That's why you have this app for people. And you mentioned about your love for your mother, your wife, and your sister. um i I recently discovered that my mom liked to share this interview, like this specific interview, to family and friends. And in the past, I was live this interview on Zoom, but I after that I will turn the live into a private mode so I can post it on YouTube and send it to AVAD. But the minute that I knew my mom shared this live to family, I was like, okay, let's just uh just keep it public so my mom can do it and enjoy what she does. And I did not know that your mom is the philosopher at home as well.
Yeah.
Did she inspire by your study, or has she always been the philosopher?
Oh, she always liked to read a lot, she's always been studying, and she's also very religious, so she's a great inspiration in that sense.
That's awesome. So very much you got this love and this curiosity and a deep learning from her, I
Yeah,
assume.
yeah.
Mm. Does she speak English as well, or does she speak Brazilian?
Yeah, she speaks English. She she can navigate. She can come to the US and and be here, but yeah, Portuguese is her
Portuguese.
native language.
Okay, okay. That's awesome. Well, I hope all mom would be inspired by your mom,
Thank
because
you.
it's when a woman learn, not only she help herself, but she help three generation, like her husband like herself generation, her kid, and then her grandkid as well. That's
Yeah.
what I learned. Yeah. And that's what I love to hear from, friend and family about their friend and family as well. So very much inspiring. And so I have another question for you before, well, I have two more questions for you before I let you go back to your daily life. Thank you so much for being here. So the next question is, if you can always give an advice for people, not just your user, but everybody can be a stranger as well. What would you give an advice in happiness for that person?
That's a very good one. Um, so I'll give you two answers, because I had an answer before, and I kind of been studying something else now that I have a second answer, a second advice. So before, uh, is kind of to be happy it requires for us to do what's right, not what feels good. Right? I mean, we as humans, you know, we are born with this instinct that we have to maximize pleasure and avoid pain because that instinct helped us survive for a long time, right? We like to eat like high calorie density foods, right? We like to eat sugar and fat and carbohydrates, whatever, because we develop a pleasure in eating these things because 100,000 years ago, people that ate a lot of carbs and a lot of sugar and a lot of fat, they survived, right? And so a lot of the things that give us short-term pleasure today, they won't make us happy, you know, and people follow a lot that instinct, you know, you know, doing the short-term pleasure instead of doing what's right for them for the long term, right? A lot of the things, going to the gym sometimes not pleasant, you know, eating well is not pleasant. For a lot of people that are introverts, you know, reaching out to another person and having relationships is sometimes it's hard, right? So I think this is kind of the one, you know, one piece of advice is be careful not doing all the time what feels good, but doing what's right for who you want to become, right? And then the second one, which is actually very linked to that, is related to that, right? I'm reading a book now. I don't know if you guys know about this book. It's called Why Buddhism is True. And the central idea of the book is that again, emotions, uh, they they are they were not designed to reflect reality in the most accurate way. You know, emotions were, again, they developed to help us survive, right? And if our emotions can trick us to make us survive, they will trick us, right? So for example, you know, I live in New York, right? And in New York, you have bike lanes. And sometimes when I'm running early in the morning on the river, you know, the sidewalk is very like there are a lot of holes, you know, and it's kind of sometimes you can get hurt on the sidewalk. So sometimes when the bike lane is not, it's kind of empty, I run on the side of the bike lane. And people just yell, you know, whenever somebody passes by and it's like, oh, you know, get out of the bikeway and things like that. And there's an emotion, right? And what's this emotion? You know, in the past, you would live in tribes and you have some rights, you know, and there are some rules in the tribe. And if somebody doesn't respect the rules that you have your home, you have your food, you have a family, whatever, you know, people would abuse you. And then you would kind of be in a bad position in the tribe. You know, people not respect you and you probably be abandoned the tribe and things like that. So that emotion of saying, oh, if there's somebody there's on the bike lane and the bike lane is mine, is not his, I'm gonna yell at that person. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, what running in the bike lane, I'm not gonna kill anybody, I'm not gonna hurt anybody. But somebody has this emotion of like, okay, this person is affecting my rule, right? When you go to a restaurant here in New York and it's like a little cold, you feel like, okay, you know, it's not pleasant, you know, and it doesn't matter. Like for you to be in a restaurant at 18 degrees, you're not going to die. You're not going to get a cold or anything, but you feel unpleasantness. Why? Because 100,000 years ago, if you start feeling cold, you didn't have a place to hide or anything. So you die of hypothermia, right? So a lot of these emotions that we have on a day-to-day are illusions that were created for us to survive. And that's why people react completely different to the same event that happens to them. So having the ability to understand the emotions that you're feeling and then judging if the emotion is useful or is just a useless illusion, it's very important. You know, and there are, again, meditation helps with that, you know, counting 90 seconds between the stimulus that I receive and reacting, you know, is important for that. But so I've been studying a lot this thing, you know, about emotional regulation and neuroscience, and these two things, I think they make a huge difference in helping you become who you want to become.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Emotion control our daily life. especially for New Yorker. Cause, cause that uh, cause that like rushing and madness and kind of like I would not say charisma, because for me charisma is something more positive, but it's just like the vibe that everybody come to New York. That is the vibe that people will receive. But I feel like all New Yorker have this good heart, even though they are very they're rushing into something and they have this like pushing like madness like behavior. But if you need something, they would stop and help you. That's what I see from the New Yorker, and I heard from a lot of people too. Um, Personally, because you mentioned about emotion, Buddha talked a lot about emotion as well, and we got to learn about the Buddha in our MA studies. And and lately, I have to learn to balance my emotion as well. For example, yesterday I went to this gas station to pump gas, and I was waiting for this two car move aside, but because the gas station have two entrance, you can go to this entrance or the other entrance, and me and the other car behind me was waiting for this two car move aside, and the minute that the car move aside, there's a car from outside from the street drove directly to like just drove in and then took the spot in front of our eyes. And we were like, I was so mad. And I told Ben that I'm going to stop, and came out and talked to this man because he took my spot and he took the other person's spot. And this gas station is small. It's hard to drive and to, find a spot. That's unfair. And then suddenly I had a realization that because I was so mad at this person, this two car, now I don't like if I keep continuing get mad at them, if I keep getting mad at them, then I won't be able to find a spot. And I have to like draw out and then came back to find a parking lot. Instead of like focusing on like getting mad at that person, I have to find a solution. I have to find a way, because I cannot, let this emotion control my day. And I was driving the car and I was driving the baby as well. So I have to calm down. And like personally, I was like, calm down, go back to the center, go back to the center. And that's what happened to me almost my entire life, not just that time, not just yesterday, even with the studies, and we got blessed to learn about happiness study and, emotion and other things that control our daily life as well. But it took me 2 years or more. It's very much like my entire life to control my emotion for just that minute, just that minute. Otherwise, I would like come out and maybe like fighting with some random person and not knowing like if that person can hurt me or not. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's a very smart advice. Actually, it's a very smart advice. Thank you, Petro. I love what you share with us today, because it's all come down to your wisdom, your experience in life and what you have been going, like what you have gone through. And you learn from, not just your life, but other people around you as well. That's why you have this understanding. And
Thanks so much.
yeah, I'm so thankful for your advice too, because it reminds me about myself. And my last question for you, if you have any chance to interview other students, who would you interview?
Of the students of the MA,
Yes.
One person that I got some more close, but I didn't have an opportunity to have deeper conversation. And it's funny because we have a a somewhat similar background. It's Mariano.
Mm.
So Mariano, an amazing person, had some challenges doing the, DMA. So, we connected and we participated on two happy groups. So we never had an opportunity to have like deeper conversation. So that would be one person that I would be curious about hearing the experience.
Yes. And I did invite Mariano as well, but he was on a trip. It's like you.
Living life.
Yes. So he told me that after his trip, we will reconnect and
Right.
potentially having, like I will make appointment with him and I will let you know. I also, Brian talked about the idea that interviewing you, he being a host, but it was so quick that it just happened. So it was so convenient for me and you, but it was so quick for Brian that he cannot manage his schedule, that he really want to interview you. And he's like, I really want to interview Pedro.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. And I feel like we should always connect just because you have a Ray tour to support Brazilian and potentially, people from the whole world. So having a connection like, Shalene from Taiwan, she have a background not
Yeah.
only in happiness study, but she also have a background in education as well, especially for
great.
special kids. So it will be, people will be a great support for not just your app, but also, get to learn from you and Brazilian and the culture. And from there, it's kind of like the idea of Ubuntu.
Yeah.
It's not, it's because of you are that way, that's why I am this way too. It's not just you are Brazilian and I'm Vietnamese and I'm Taiwan, but we are the same person. Yeah.
I left my email here on the chat. So if anybody wants to connect, it will be a pleasure.
Yes. And I see that, I know I say that I have two more questions for you, but I saw Shalene has the final question for you, if you have time. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
question is, I am curious on knowing more information about an app. Would it be okay to contact Pedro? Okay, so that is the
Yeah.
question.
I left my email here.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So she is a great person. She has a lot of wonderful questions. And as people who really have this drive and this clear picture, that's why they have so many good questions. Not
Yeah.
everybody was able to ask question, or even if they have an idea, but they don't have a clear picture in their mind, and they won't be able to ask question, especially like good question. Yeah. Okay,
Thanks
thank
for having
you.
me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Pedro, so much. Thank you for answers my text and willing to be here today, even though you just came back from your trip last week. But you managed the time and you can come here and share with us your wisdom. I'm so
Thank you.
glad that I get the time to learn from you and learn from your app. And I was serious about, like if you need any volunteer, then, please contact me and then contact, everybody who you have in mind. Because I'm sure
will.
like we would love to help, and then we would not just support, but we would love to learn more from you as well.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. You
Thanks.
have a wonderful
Bye-bye.
day. Bye bye,
You
Pedro.
too. Bye, everybody.